So that's not rolling.
We're just having a good time.
Having a good time. You're staring at a light. I'm staring at nothing.
I never saw a thing.
Yeah, and I'm on a squeaky chair, so I'm going to try not to move.
Okay.
Yeah. So, all right. So, first question, David.
Sure.
Is how long have you been involved with the ministry here in Northfield?
Oh, wow. Way to make me feel old, Tom.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Well, it's not 1961, the founding of camp. I think I came in mid-80s, I guess.
Okay. And the other question I have for you is, what directors have you served under?
Oh,
Yeah.
What directors? Well, obviously, a guy named Boss,
Okay.
who was well beloved. He was the friendliest guy I ever knew as a young person. And he was one of the first people I met when I was working on the dish room crew. And then after that was Guy Stockslager, and then Mike Griffin. And there was a period of time where Dave Byron was acting director for a while. And then it was Jeremy Lozier. And then the new kid, Tom Jackson.
Yeah, that kid. I would be worried about him. But, all right. Yeah, and I also had...
Did I miss any?
I don't think you did.
Okay.
Were you here when Bob Knipe was here? Did you mention him?
Oh, yes, Bob Knipe. I'm sorry, Bob. I forgot about Bob Knipe. I love that man.
Yeah,
Yes.
so when I came on the scene, Christy and I, we both worked underneath Dave Byron, and then Bob Knipe, and then we served alongside with the Loziers as well.
Yeah.
And then we have to get stuck with these Jackson people. They're really weird. But outside of that, I think, I never had the opportunity to meet Boss Hilliker. But I've heard a lot about him.
Yes.
I know that my father has had the privilege of meeting the Hillikers, and so, there's some connection there, but a long history of directors here at Northfield. Next question.
All right.
Okay. So you've been an outdoorsman kind of like your whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And what's the most scariest wildlife encounter you've ever had?
You mean at camp or elsewhere?
It does not matter.
Okay.
This is just an open-ended question.
Okay. Absolute truth. Last November, I was camping on a hill in the Berkshires, within a mile of the New York border, alone. And I laid out my sleeping bag on the ground because I wanted to sleep under the stars. And I was not in my sleeping bag more than 1 hour when I heard some massive grunting and huffing a short distance away from me. And I knew that a black bear was approaching me. So I denied the reality of it for a brief period of time. And then I finally pulled out my knife and turned on my headlamp and sat up in my sleeping bag. And approaching me were two very, very large eyeballs. And I could hear the huffing and the grunting and the sound of tree branches breaking as the bear approached me. And I immediately slid out of my sleeping bag, stood up, and had to decide fight or flight. But that was the closest encounter I've had to wildlife recently that I remember. It was pretty frightful.
Yeah. I've never, well, I take that back. I did have a small encounter with a bear. It was during the daylight, so I actually saw him.
You got to see him, yeah.
And so that, I'm sure at nighttime that was just added a whole nother level.
Yeah, just two giant eyeballs getting bigger and coming towards you. And in my mind, I knew, bears are not a problem. They make a lot of noise. But unfortunately, I forgot all of my outdoor training and I just ran as fast as I possibly could.
Oh, man. Anyway, so now that we have that out of the way, I wanted to throw another question for you, and that is, what is your craziest Camp Northfield story?
Well,
that you're able to share on camera.
I might not share the craziest Camp Northfield story, but I do remember we had a group of rowdy boys in Boys 1, and I was a counselor in training. And I was left with the cabin because our counselor was busy with something else and we were understaffed. So I could not get these boys to go to sleep, and it was driving me nuts. I was starting to get angry, and I thought, I cannot believe these kids will not go to sleep. It was junior one. They were so excited. They were out of control. They were turning on their flashlights and running around the cabin, which they're not supposed to do after lights out, right? And I heard giggling and laughing and things dropping, and I said, I don't know what to do. So finally, I said to my co-counselor, you just start talking to me very quietly as if I'm here, and I'm going to slip out. So I slipped out very quietly, and I went around to the back of the cabin, and I crawled underneath the cabin. And when I went underneath the cabin, I went to directly under the bunk of the most rowdy boy, and I grabbed a rock, and I banged it up against the bottom of the floorboards. And all of a sudden, all of the kids in the cabin just stopped talking and said, "What was that? What was that?" And they got all scared, and somebody said, "It sounded like something was under the cabin." And I moved around to a different location under a different bunk, and I banged the bottom of the floorboards, and I could hear that kid leap and scream. And the boys started calling out to the counselors, "Help, help, there's something under the cabin." And my other counselor was saying, "You didn't hear anything, just go to sleep, you're fine. You were told to be lights out, don't worry about it. I'm sure there's no bears or anything under the cabin." And this went on for a few more minutes, and I routinely kept banging the bottom of the floorboards randomly. I would wait for them to get really quiet, and then I would move under another bunk and smash the boards again. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
We did many, many fun things like that.
And being on staff myself, we've also had our fair share of stories. Now, you've been on the board of directors for a while now, and we've been tackling a lot of different projects. What is your favorite project that we have completed so far?
Favorite project? Well, I have to say the pool, because watching the pool go into a decrepit state over about 10 years, and how much time and effort and money we poured into trying to save that pool, which was built in the 40s, so we're talking about an 80-year-old pool. It had passed its usable life, and it was COVID, kids were all shut in, you couldn't be with people, and I thought, oh Lord, a pool would be such a good thing for kids to have. And we couldn't get a pool contractor, nobody could find anybody to do the work, and everything came together miraculously, the money, the timing, the contractor, and seeing that pool get built in just a matter of a month, basically, and being ready in time for the camp season was absolutely an answer to prayer. That was the most exciting thing I've seen happen in recent years.
Yeah, and that day, I mean, talk about timing. Like I had boy staff with me, and we had to get the fence up before Pioneer Camp started,
Right.
and we were out there with headlamps, just pouring concrete, putting in the posts, lining up the the fence, and just trying to get it all right for the kids to come. And so we were under the gun, but we made it in time. We got everything up to where it needed to be, but it was really cool to see how God worked in that project. So I have to agree, that's probably one of my favorite projects that we've tackled as well. But moving on to some more serious questions.
Okay.
Okay. So you have to get ready for this one. What are some ways that God has impacted your life here at camp?
Oh, so many stories could be told.
Yeah.
I remember being on night watch. I was 16 years old. I was doing night watch, so, up all night from right through the night until 6 a.m., until somebody came into the lodge and took over. So I was on night watch, and the campfire down near the outpost area had been put out, or mostly put out. The kids had gone to their cabins. And of course, naturally, me being a pyromaniac, I kept it going. And I would routinely, as I made my rounds around camp property, I would come back to that campfire, and I would add another log, and that was my comfort for the night, was to keep that fire going. And I remember standing there and looking up at the stars, and it was a crisp night, perfectly clear. And I had been challenged by the chapel speakers for the kids, the junior campers. And all of a sudden I found myself wondering, what am I really committed to on this earth? Who am I living for? And out in the quietness of the outpost area, I looked up to the sky and I said, God, I'm sorry, but I've been living for myself. And I may have accepted your offer of salvation as a young person, basically as an insurance policy to get out of hell, and I just didn't understand the weight of his love and mercy and grace. I looked up at the sky and I said, Lord, I'm going to accept your love, your grace, your mercy on my life. And I said, could you just acknowledge that with a sign for me right now? And at that moment, a meteor crossed the sky right over the center of the outpost area while I was staring up. And I said, that'll do. It was just a moment in time that I recognized, okay, this is the choice, this is the commitment. And that was the moment I began living for God, truly.
Amen. And the other question to add on to that would, what has led you to be on the board of directors?
I cannot express how much I love what this ministry does for children. And because I love children, I want to see them come here and experience the same things I have. I was struggling to find a purpose in life as a young person, not understanding where I should go, what I should do, all of those questions that other kids come with. And I see the hopelessness that's in the earth today, and I say, Lord, if I can get kids to camp, there's a chance that they will find some sense of hope and purpose. And being on the board allows me to share my energy, share my effort, share my money, share my time, and be with kids. Come here and go tubing down the hill with them, help them pull their tubes up the hill, teach them things that are related to the outdoors, and just be here to show them that there's a way of hope and peace here for you. And as long as I'm able, I want to support the ministry at camp in that way.
Great. So this kind of leads us right into what I'm sure a lot of people have been waiting for, is questions about the housing project that's in progress right now. So I know that you've been very heavily involved with this project since day one. Can you walk us back to how this project got started?
Okay. Well, we've got a logjam or a bottleneck in terms of housing, meaning we can't have kids here if we've got people living upstairs in the lodge where we could actually have more bunks. And we can't have your family move and make room for other families. So there's sort of this bottleneck where in order to add more programs for kids, we've got to add more space to add more staff. And the simple fact is we don't have anything more than one house. And the other places that we have on the hill are not suitable to put families. We appreciate your willingness to live in tents like the Old Testament, but
Sure.
the fact is that for people to serve at camp, we need to give them good housing. And unfortunately, we've demolished 2 houses that we had. So we had 3 houses, and we had to demolish 2 because they just came into disrepair. Honestly, my Bible reading this morning was from 1 Kings, where it's talking about Solomon building the temple. We're not going to build you a temple here. But
That's fair.
the challenge in the Bible reading app was use the gifts that God has given you to serve his people and to build something together for the Lord. So we're building a house not necessarily for you, but for the Lord, because when we have housing, we can have staff. When we have staff, we can have kids. When we have kids, then they can be taught the ways of the Lord. So I look at this whole bottleneck and I say, housing is the thing that we have to solve. And that's why I got involved, was because I said, we're not going to put people in buildings that are falling down. We're going to finish falling them down. And then, as the Bible app said, let's get together and build something for the Lord.
Great answer. So here's another one, is that we put out that original video back in September of 2023.
Wow.
What was it like making that video? And then the follow-up question to that would be, ultimately, would be what has been accomplished since then?
From the first video, I had my doubts about what could happen. And that in spite of the fact that we had just seen a pool come out of nowhere. And money is always a concern. I don't like to let money lead the conversation, but it has to be in the conversation. And so when we said we need $400,000 to build a house, I was worried that some people would say, that's ridiculous, you should be able to do it for half. And instead people said, oh no, that sounds reasonable. Yeah, let's do it. And immediately somebody donated $100,000 to the project, and boom, we were at 25% of the funding needed. That was a bit of a rebuke to me, because I just didn't have the faith coming out of COVID that we could get together and build something like that. And so now, having come since that first video, I'm still excited about the project, and I want to see it. I want to be here and see it through to completion.
Yeah, yeah. And a lot has been done since then, correct?
Correct. You had a forest, and now that's been slaughtered. And we donated many cord of firewood to local residents in the Northfield area who benefited already from clearing the lot. And it's presently being burned so that we can put in a foundation in the spring. We've got the electrical plan to bring a trench in from the street. And so we are ready to build, and we wish people will come and share that with us.
Yeah, and we put in an accents road too as well. And there's been other projects that have kind of trickled down the line because of this project. We've had a lot of work that needed to be done on our main road, and that actually was done over the summer as well, which was fantastic. So we have Janice Lyman is kind of heading the project construction-wise, and so allowing them to kind of take that on gives us the freedom to be able to continue to work on things that need to be worked on over the summer. So that's been really good. What is it like back at the new lot right now? Like, what was what was your first reaction? Because for me, it was a very emotional one. I mean, I'll tell you my reaction, and I'll let you share. But when we first went back there, it's exciting because things are moving forward. But growing up, we had the outdoor chapel that was kind of like a staple for my generation at camp. And the new access road was kind of went right down the middle, and it was just oh man, so many memories were there. We ended up moving it to literally it was I don't know, maybe 25 feet over, and it's such a beautiful spot right now. But it was an emotional time just seeing something that we used for so many years. But then at the same time, it was emotional because, wow, it's actually getting done. We're seeing progress. We're seeing the new road come in. We're seeing the lot get cleared, and you can actually start to picture the house coming together. And so it's beautiful back there, and it's a lot of emotion.
Yeah, I felt that because we knew when we found that piece of land and we said, this is the perfect spot for a house. It doesn't impact the rest of the operations anywhere on campus. And when I first looked at that and I started drawing it all out and bringing it to the board, I thought, Dave, if this actually goes, then it goes. And I felt a little bit nervous about it because I walked out there on the Ironman trail and I looked at it and I said, oh Lord, this is the perfect spot for a house. But I love the trees, and I love the Ironman running trail, and I would walk that, and it was such a place of peace.
Right.
And thinking back to all the Ironman runs that we would do through there, and the outdoor chapel, I thought, oh, this is holy ground. We cannot alter this. But then I thought, all of it is holy ground. Yeah. All of it is dedicated to the Lord, and all of it is dedicated to the purpose of the camp. So when we said, no, this is the perfect spot, then this is where the spot will be. And honestly, as the guy who brought the chainsaw and cut every tree down, I love cutting trees, but every time I cut them, I thought, well, Lord, here we go. Yeah. I mean, it's time to take action now. It's beyond the point of no return.
Right.
And as soon as I cut the first tree and then cut down 100 more, and I saw that we were giving away all this firewood and other people were coming to help, I realized we're doing the right thing.
Yeah, yeah. It actually also uncovered one of my new favorite spots to look at the Moody cabin.
Oh yeah.
Because that's almost like it's almost exposed at this point.
That's
from the road.
another really cool thing. I saw the access road and we mapped it all out and
Yeah.
everything made sense. And then when it actually was cleared and I drove up the access road, you're looking directly into the chapel. The first thing you see is the chapel.
Yep.
And then as you turn, you get to see the Moody cabin and the girls' cabins
cabin,
all the
yep.
way to girls' staff. And I said, it's just this beautiful panorama of camp as you turn and come up the hill. It's such a welcoming drive now to
It
come
really
in that
is.
way.
Yeah, yeah. And we've been wanting something like that for, I think, a while now. I know the board has talked about it even before our time as far as putting in some sort of an access down there, which was pretty interesting. So
There's another benefit is we always worried about getting a fire truck up the hill in a hurry.
yeah,
You can't get a fire truck up from Route 10, and getting a fire truck up through our curly previous access road was just not favorable. And with this new access road, if there's ever an event, at least I know EMT and fire can get up the hill absolutely quickly without stopping.
Absolutely.
So I think that's a really important change that we brought on too.
absolutely. I mean, safety and security has always been a big part of us moving forward. And this actually, it doesn't seem big to the average person, but that's a big deal. So that's exciting. All right, so just two more questions.
All right.
And then we'll wrap things up here. With the addition of the new home on the property, what advantages does this bring to the ministry? And I think you kind of like answered this a little bit earlier, but I guess, yeah.
The log jam gets broken, basically. We put you into a home over there. You're now at the entrance of the property. You can see who's coming and going. You're not right on Route 10 where you're separated from the camp activity. There are many, many benefits to putting you on the hill right where all the camp activity is. But the most important thing is once you're on the hill, that frees up the house down the street to be used for another permanent full-time person, maybe a program director, sports, evangelism, whatever it is. The point is we'll have a place. And once we have that capacity, that frees up this Hilliker Lodge that we're in now to be used for more programs. Without more staff, there's a breaking point for the number of kids we can bring on to campus, even if we have all the volunteer staff that we normally do. We're really looking for more full-time commitment to the ministry. And honestly, if there's going to be a future with building a recreation hall or something else like that, we're going to need many more hands and we're going to need many more eyes on the property. So this first house is just the floodgate that opens to allow us to bring more kids onto the property.
Yeah, exactly. Very well said and very well stated. And last but not least, after this housing project, what do you think is the next big project here at camp?
Oh, there's so many projects we could do. We talked about, we've talked about many things. Personal opinion is that having been to many camps around New England and other places in the country, one of the things that is difficult with our property is that when it's pouring rain for 3 days straight with thunderstorms, it's very difficult to keep the kids engaged in programs. And one of the things this camp lacks is a recreation hall, a place where everybody can go to be, number one, safe in a storm, and number two, where we can have functions, where we can have indoor sports, where we could have off-season recreation opportunities for our churches to come. Without a recreation hall, it's miserable if it rains for 5 days during junior week because the kids go crazy. And there's only so much you can do in our little chapel and in our cafeteria. So honestly, a recreation hall that would be a multi-purpose room and it would be 4 seasons would allow us to do the things that a camp should be able to do for kids and churches all the time.
Yeah, and we've talked about this extensively at a lot of our meetings. Like that would be like, that's like the pinnacle as far as like once we get everything else all lined up, ready to go, like that's the ideal project because that's gonna really increase of what we're able to do here. And one of my favorite things too is, and I know it's a favorite for a lot of folks that come to camp, and that's our Christmas banquet. We'd be able to use that building for that during the winter, having, like you said, a 4-season building, and be able to have everyone here all at once rather than breaking it up into different sections because of we're limited spacing in here. So much to look forward to for the future of camp, and this project is a very exciting one. What are some different ways that people can help? How are some ways that people can help contribute to this project as we're ongoing?
Well, certainly prayer is number one. I put that in my phone, every morning. Prayer is the priority. So whatever we are facing in life, prayer is number one. And I truly mean that about this project, because projects should never go forward simply on the will of people and the muscle of people. It should be driven by prayer, so that we know that we say we want God involved with everything, but we really do need to mean it with our prayers, and letting Him direct the operations of the camp and everything that we want to do. And number two is, obviously we're still short $300,000, so it'd be nice if 3 people would give $100,000. I say that and it sounds ridiculous, but also to me and to the churches, it doesn't matter if 3 people give $100,000 or 3,000 people give $100. I'm saying that I don't want to limit how the funding happens. If there are 3 people who want to give $100,000, like someone already did that, and I believe there are 3 more who could do that, that's fine. But however the money comes in for the project is truly to be led by the Holy Spirit. But we can't put the concrete in the ground until the money is in hand. One thing I'm committed to is not going into debt. And that requires all of us as constituents of camp to sacrificially give beyond what we normally give at home in order to make this project happen. I would like to have the concrete in the ground, and once the concrete's in the ground, it would be very quick to finish building the entire house, but that means that $300,000 has to come in quickly. So, Lord, open the windows of heaven, and if that money comes in, we're ready to build immediately.
Absolutely. And we also do 2 major fundraisers at the beginning of the year. One that's coming up next week, which will be our pancake breakfast. We encourage you guys all to come out to that. It's a great way to support the raising of the funds. We'll have a lot more updates with that as well. And then we have our annual Hilltop Challenge, which we're excited for.
Yes.
And all the monies, again, will go towards the housing project, but that's a fun day. And
yeah, I will come and sacrificially run. That's another way to give.
It is.
You give your time, you give your effort, you give your commitments to the children here. All of those are valid ways of supporting the work that the Lord is doing here.
All right. Well, thank you, David, for your time this afternoon, and we're looking forward to what God is doing with this project. But overall, it's really exciting to see what He's been doing with this ministry.
It is. Amen and amen.
All right. Well, I'll let you get going here, but thank
Thank
you.